In my recent review of the copycats from Gumball, I made a passing comment that I wasn't really that big of a fan of the transition between Gumball's and Darwin's voice actors, so going from Jacob Hopkins to Nicholas Cantu, and from Terrell Ransom Jr. to Danielle T. Hansley Jr. It's not so much the transition itself, as it is how the transition was handled. Voice acting is a profession that I have nothing but utmost respect for. It's a completely different beast from live-action performances, as all of us are aware of. It should come as a surprise to no one, and I feel that it doesn't get paid its dues. Well, not as often as it should be, because in a voice acting setting, you only have the sound of your own voice to give life to a character, as opposed to your entire body in a live action setting. And as someone who is deeply fascinated with voice acting, let me tell you, the hard work that these men and women put in, it's worth more credit than it's getting. The many ways that they play around with all these different aspects, like inflection, tone, pitch, rhythm, it's mind-boggling. Sort of like the different kinds of body languages that a live-action performer might employ when trying to portray a character. Voice acting requires just as much skill and commitment as live-action acting does, if not more, simply because of the constraints, the expressive constraints that are imposed upon the voice actors. There has to be a good measure of trust between the voice actors, the screenwriters, and the storyboard artists in order to create that animated magic. Just like how a live action actor has to trust the vision that the director has for them. So with that being said, I've been thinking, if voice acting is indeed a prestigious and well-regarded craft just like any other, why is it being treated with the disregard that it's being treated with? And after thinking long and hard about it, my take on the subject is that it's not really the voice acting craft as a whole that's being treated with disregard, so much as the people who practice the craft are being treated with disregard. And the reason I say this is because of a number of trends, whether long-running or recent, within the voice acting industry. If you look back at 2016, which for a lot of us, I understand, could be a difficult thing to do because 2016 was a shit show, you might remember a labor strike that was put together by the Screen Actors Guild and commandeered mainly by motion capture performers and voice actors. The main issues that are being brought up by this strike are the working conditions for the voice actors and the mocap performers, the salary that these people receive, which is disproportionate to the amount of hard work that they put in, and the lack of transparency between these performers and their employers. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that this strike is still ongoing. I can only hope that both sides of this debacle reach an accord before the situation becomes uncontrollably ugly. But I'm getting a little off topic. Another point that I want to bring up to support my argument is the interchangeability of voice actors in general. Now, this trend has been around since God knows when. More often than not, voice actors are often considered interchangeable, like a bunch of clothes inside a closet. So I'm sure people are aware of famous examples of this, like the 4 different voice actors that Arnold from Hey Arnold got during that show's lifespan, the transition from Christine Cavanaugh to Candy Milo, from the first 2 seasons of Dexter's Laboratory to its last 2 seasons, and the transition from Christine Cavanaugh again, this time in Rugrats, as Chucky Finster, to Nancy Cartwright. And I'm sure people are also aware of the more recent examples of this, like the transition from Grant Palmer to Colin Dean as Lincoln Loud from The Loud House. I believe that the reasons for these attitudes towards voice actors are fundamental ones. Think of it this way. When Don Cheadle replaced Terrence Howard as James Rhodes, aka War Machine, for the second Iron Man movie and the subsequent Marvel Cinematic Universe movies, it was considered a jarring change. That's because Terrence Howard, for what little development that his character got, still managed to leave a complete impression on the audience. He left a visual impression on top of an oral one. You could remember what he looked like, not just what he sounded like. You remembered him for more than one way. It was never just one or the other. Now compare this transition to the one between Grant Palmer and Colin Dean as Lincoln Loud from The Loud House. There was no ceremony, no outcry with this transition. People didn't bat an eye for this transition the way they did for the Howard Cheadle transition. Because at the end of the day, Colin Dean is, for the most part, spot on with his portrayal of Lincoln Loud. I actually find this to be a double-edged sword. On one hand, I personally have no problems with fresh new talent trying to make a name for themselves. And so long as the essence of a character is completely maintained, then I don't have much to complain about, if at all. On the other hand, this isn't always going to be the case. Take a look at the Powerpuff Girls reboot, for instance, and what a masterpiece that turned out to be. Just for the record, I was using sarcasm. And the other thing is, all this constant glossing over of these shifts from voice actor to voice actor kind of devalues the entire craft of voice acting. How does one expect an industry to be respected if the people within that industry, the people actually working in that industry, are not even being respected themselves? Not only is this lack of acknowledgement and respect towards the voice actors not helpful for the voice acting industry, it's also quite detrimental. It's detrimental towards the reputation of the industry and to the aspirations of anyone who's hoping to become a voice actor. Why would anyone want to become part of an industry where employers can't even afford their employees the luxury of a face-to-face conversation, where the working conditions have been proven hazardous, where employers find it preposterous that their employees be paid an amount of money that is proportionate to the amount of work that they put in? Why? Why? And please spare me the whole "for the love of the art" crap, because that works 2 ways, not just one. Your passion for something can only go so far, and when other people treat your passion like shit, then your motivation is greatly affected. So with that being said, until the attitudes of these major companies towards voice acting in general undergo a drastic change, then the industry is going to remain where it is now. This is part of the reason why I put the kids from Season 3 of Gumball as number 9 in my top 10 best episodes of that series, because it treats the craft and the people who practice the craft with the proper acknowledgement and respect. It knew that Logan Grove and Kwesi Boki and the rest of the voice cast were as integral to the show as the storyboard artists, the screenwriters, and the creator himself. And it also knew that the transition from Logan Grove and Kwesi Boki to Jacob Hopkins and Terrell Ransom Jr. had a bittersweet feeling to it. It knew how sad it was that Logan and Kwesi were inevitably growing up and parting ways from the show to move on to greener pastures, but at the same time, it also remembered the contribution that they've made towards the show, and as such, they've been given the appreciation that they rightfully deserve. And I hope that these video game developers and publishers and television networks and production studios all take note from this episode. There are so many intricacies to voice acting that warrant a better attitude towards it. And if we can just change these attitudes, change these trends, then I'm certain that the entertainment industry will be much better because of it. I'm the one and only CR Martin. Ciao for now.